Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. My name is Bill Cannon. I'm a retired NYPD sergeant, a 27-year veteran. Good to be back. We took a few days off, but we're raring to go right now. The case out of Kansas City, Missouri, with these three friends that were, they're being sort of identified and as Kansas City Chiefs fans. And really, they were, they're human beings. They were legitimate guys, family men, had jobs, had families. And this is really a horrific case. And, I don't think we need to identify them just as Kansas City Chiefs fans. They were good citizens of this country, ages 36, 37, and 38. Two of them went to the same class in high school together. So when we come out with what actually occurred, it's been 3 weeks since they called them. Three Kansas City fans joined friends to watch the Chiefs play the Los Angeles Chargers in the final game of the regular season. Their bodies were found in a friend's backyard 2 days later. Police still haven't said how the men died, but affirmed recently amid intense public speculation that they still have no evidence of foul play. It's common for police to decline to comment much on an investigation before it's complete. So here's a look at what's known and not known in a mystery that has gained widespread attention on social media and the internet, despite or because of the lack of solid information. And this is according to the Associated Press. Police accounts say Ricky Johnson, age 38, Clayton McGeeney, age 36, and David Harrington, age 37, went to the home of a friend in Kansas City, Missouri to watch the Chiefs game on January 7th. None of them made it home. 2 nights later, McGeeney's fiancée went to the home looking for him. When there was no answer at the door, she broke into the basement of the residence and located an unknown dead body on the back porch. Officers responded to the back porch and confirmed that there was a dead body. Upon further investigation, officers located 2 other dead bodies in the backyard. An initial police report on the incident said there were no obvious signs of foul play observed at or near the crime scene. Police say there are still no signs that any crime was committed. There still remains a death investigation and nothing more, according to Officer Alana Gonzalez, a spokeswoman for the Kansas City Police Department. She said that in an email Saturday to the Associated Press. We still have no evidence or indication of foul play. No one is in police custody at this time. So, folks, I know, and this is a very sensitive case, all the families want answers. All these gentlemen have children, wives, other family members. And right now, there is no good answers to pacify the family members. So we're going to dig into this, folks. Hang on to your seats. Get ready to enter true crime from a police perspective. And of course, off the cuff, you're entering the police off the cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch, Michael Ryder.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger. Joining me tonight to dig into this very interesting and very baffling case and very sad case. We feel so badly for the families of Clayton McGeeney, Ricky Johnson, and David Harrington. And we'll get more into that later. But joining me tonight to dig into this is retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, law degree, all-around good guy, Professor Mike Geary. Mike, welcome to the show.
Billy, good to see you. Good evening. Thank you for having me on. Good evening,
Always
everyone.
great to have you. And also joining us, another NYPD veteran, retired NYPD detective, and straight out of Brooklyn, New York. Welcome, Detective Phil Grimaldi, to the show. Phil, welcome.
Thank you, Billy. And I like that veteran detective. That had a good ring to it. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, good to see you, Phil.
So, guys, I mean, look, we've worked mysterious cases like this. We've worked cases, and I'd like to remind everyone when the police talk about manner of death, and it's defined as homicide, suicide, accidental, natural, and they add one more, 5, undetermined. And right now, this case is listed as undetermined. And that's not doing anything for the families. The families see all kinds of discrepancies, all kinds of things that point what we would call on the NYPD as fugaziness, as some things that are suspicious to them, yet they're getting no satisfaction out of this. And the police right away said, there's no signs of foul play. This is not a homicide investigation. This is a death investigation. And right now, we don't have the answers for you. You will have to wait until the toxicology comes back. The autopsies apparently have been completed. However, the results have not been disseminated yet to the public. Mike, your thoughts?
Billy, I think they're right. I think the Kansas City police and the coroner's office, they're right. Do not release the results of the autopsy because part of the autopsy is getting the lab work back on the blood, the toxicology. And at that point, there'll be decision made as to whether or not this will turn from a death investigation to a homicide investigation. But until that point, I think it's better that they're closed lip in order to put a damper on some of this rampant speculation that has gone on. I think it's the best thing to do right now.
Absolutely. Phil, I wanted to mention to you the person whose house this was. His name is Jordan Willis. He's actually a PhD, a very educated man, an HIV and AIDS researcher, and knew the victims from high school and actually got reacquainted with them as he moved back to this area from many years of study en route to his PhD. Now, they were over his house, obviously, to watch a football game. And that really doesn't have that much to do with it, other than that was the whole purpose they were there. Now, at some points, where lies a lot of the discrepancies, at some point, Mr. Jordan Willis, the person who is he doesn't own the house, he rents the house, he allegedly goes to bed, and his 3 friends at some point leave. I don't think that's clear as to what time they exited the house. They're found dead 2 days later in the backyard, and apparently they froze to death, dead of apparent hypothermia. Your thoughts, Phil?
Well, right off the bat, Billy, this is obviously a very extremely sad and a tragic turn of events. I mean, a group of friends get together to watch a football game, something that, just about everybody in America does this time of the year. We gather around the television set with some, some cocktails and something to eat. And, you try to enjoy a Sunday afternoon. That's what appears to have been going on in this case. However, it did turn tragic. I think the chances that there was some alcohol consumption are probably very high. Really, from what it sounds like to me, based on what you already stated, Billy, there's no apparent signs of foul play in this case. Medical examiner didn't find any. What that means to me is they didn't find any obvious signs of trauma, bullet wounds, knife wounds, anything of that nature. Now, you have fairly young individuals. I believe David Harrington, 37, Clayton McGinney, 36, and Ricky Johnson, 38. You mentioned that Jordan Willis is a scientist just about with regards to AIDS research. So these weren't, guys that hang around in a bar and do drugs or anything. These sound like well-to-do individuals. However, the answer to their death, I think, is going to lie in the toxicology report. Perhaps there was some drug interaction that led to these deaths. There's a lot of things that are a little cloudy and unclear, but I think that The statement from the police saying that this is a death investigation, that's not a homicide investigation, that's pretty clear. And I think there was a statement from the attorney that's representing Jordan Willis. He said that his client has no idea and looks forward to, is anxious to see what the toxicology results are going to be.
How involved? A close source telling Fox Nation, not only is the whole country accusing him of murdering his friends without factual details, evidence, or any charges at this time, but he also lost 3 close friends. So what happened? Here with the reaction forensic pathologist and Fox News contributor, Dr. Michael Bodden. Doctor,
Hi.
good morning.
Good morning, Steve.
It's so puzzling because Mr. Willis, of the 4 people who were in the house that night, there was a 5th, but he left at midnight. Of the 4 people, he's the one guy whose house it was and the one guy who didn't die.
Yeah, but it sounds like from what's been released so far that he slept for a long period of time. It may be that all 4 of them took something that made them pass out. He passed out indoors and slept it off. They passed out in the cold weather and snow, and within an hour, the body temperature would go down from 98 degrees to 80 degrees, and the heart rhythm goes awry, and the person dies of a cardiac arrest because of the cold, hypothermia. And the toxicology will be very helpful because the toxicology will tell us the level of what was present and the level. This may be just a recreational level, and they didn't die of a drug overdose.
It's so puzzling because it would be one thing if it was one person, but the simultaneous deaths of 3 people?
You're absolutely right. The most common simultaneous deaths are caused by carbon monoxide, but that's indoors always.
Right.
Outdoors, you don't die of carbon monoxide. And that's why I think that they took something that drug users commonly.
You're saying they all took
all
something.
4 may have taken the same unknown. They may not have known what was in the material they were taking, and they got confused. They passed out. One passes out indoors and sleeps it off. The others are outdoors and die of the cold. And I'm sure the police already know. They were at the scene. They got information from the scene, what was used and not. I'm sure this Willis person is talking and cooperating with what he knows. The police are looking for whoever supplied the drug, and when they find out, they'll release the information. They know the cause of death. They know what the toxicology is by now.
So the cops, the KC cops, are playing it close to the vest so as not to tip off whoever might have supplied.
That would be my impression, yes, because the medical examiner stuff is finished.
Yeah. And we are purely speculating because we don't have any inside information. I don't know if you do. But what sort of drugs could they have taken to do this?
Well, there are many different, about 20 different kinds of fentanyl analogs. And some of them do cause rapid fainting, really passing out, fainting.
Knocks you out.
At a recreational level, and that's they sleep it off.
Do people buy it for that purpose?
No, but they know that if they take that most drug abusers, these are not chronic users, but most people who use drugs know that if they pass out, usually, almost always, they'll sleep it off and come through it. You don't die every time you have you pass out.
Yeah.
But then they wake up, and that's part of what they're going through.
Right.
Especially with the narcotic drugs.
Sure. And real quickly, I'd read some reports, friends, family members of the people who died, they go, this guy didn't use drugs. But if they are drinking, first of all, sometimes you do stuff.
Alcohol and drugs, and there are no natural diseases that would cause 3 healthy persons to die simultaneously. So there's no natural disease, no criminal or stabbing, shooting, or anything.
So very, very, very interesting. I think that Dr. Bodden gives a pretty good explanation here. But what I would think, though, if I was one of the family members, I wouldn't want to believe this. I would totally not want to believe that my loved one took a drug and went outside, froze to death. Someone mentioned in the chat, wasn't there odors from the body? The bodies were frozen solid.
No.
They had to wait days for the bodies to thaw out in order to conduct the autopsy. So to answer that question in the chat, no, there was no odor because the bodies were frozen. But the other thing is, here they are, probably having a couple of beers, watching a football game. Maybe someone introduced, oh, you guys want to take a gander at this, and they all took the same. And I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying that's what could happen. That's what Dr. Baden is saying he thinks happened. And the one individual who was the house owner or renter, Jordan Willis, he passes out in the house and allegedly sleeps for a day or 2 days straight.
I think they said it was like 22 hours or something, Billy, is what I read.
And doesn't occur to him to check anything. Well, why would he? He doesn't go outside. And he wasn't answering his phone, wasn't answering text messages, wasn't going on his computer, apparently, because people are trying to get a hold of him because their loved ones are lying dead in his backyard, unbeknownst to him. So what happens is the fiance of one of these gentlemen goes and bangs on the door and then breaks into the house and still can't wake him up, goes to the backyard and sees one of the bodies on like the patio sitting in a chair, calls the police. He's apparently dead. The police come to the scene and discover the other two bodies. No signs of trauma, no signs of stab wounds, gunshot wounds, blunt trauma, anything like that. So it's baffling to them. So now it is a death investigation and not a homicide investigation. They go to interview Mr. Jordan Willis, who is fully cooperative, maybe a bit hazy from being in a potentially a stupor for 2 days, allows them to do a consent search of his house, unknown if they recovered anything. And a couple of days later, they actually do a second search via a search warrant. So unknown what they recovered in each of these, but everyone wants a piece of Jordan Willis. People are believing, and look, if I was a family member, I would be suspicious too. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, Jordan Willis's story that he slept for like 2 days. He was sleeping for 2 days. Never looked outside. He had headphones on. They were like sound drowning headphones, and he had a loud fan on. Strike people as a little odd, and so therefore they're like, "Oh, that can't be. You must have gotten up at once." But the reality is, and and Phil knows, we're on patrol. You see people, crackheads, they'll be up for days and days and days, and they'll pass out for days and days and days, in some sort of semi-conscious stupor, the deepest sleep the human body could ever get to before you die, and they come out of it. So that's as strange as it may seem to a lot of people. And I was skeptical, but you start thinking about it, his story may be fairly accurate, although people jump over every single inconsistency. But remember, he was cooperative. And I think, as Dr. Baden said, the police already have gone through that house, and you and Phil know, you've done these sort of things. You probably have collected samples of things that may be narcotics, and you're just waiting for the toxicology report to see if what the toxicology says is in the bloodstreams of those young men is, in your voucher at the station house. So that's what we're waiting for. But the police have a good handle on this already. They're not just sitting around. And I just want the people to know that the police do have a good handle of what has gone on.
But I think that, people in the chat keep mentioning the fifth person who has not been named. There was a fifth person that attended this little football watch party, whatever you want to call it. Like, we used to call it Super Bowl party. There wasn't even a Super Bowl. It was just a game.
Last game of the season for Kansas.
Yeah, Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers. I keep calling them the San Diego Chargers, who they used to be. Every year, so these teams move to other cities. Anyway, the Los Angeles Chargers. There's a fifth person in the house, unnamed. is he the guy in the grassy knoll? That's what everyone keeps referring to. Is he the one that supplied the drug? What does he know about this? He left earlier. Could he be the culprit? I mean, we're not seeing this we personally aren't seeing this as suspicious. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. I don't know why Dr. Bodden said the toxicology is already back. It takes 6 to 8 weeks
It's not back.
for the toxic. I mean, I don't know when he got that. He was the New York City chief medical examiner, back in 21 BC, but he was the New York City chief medical examiner. How's he not know that it takes 6 to 8 weeks for the toxicology to come back? Phil.
Yeah, Billy, I want to make a couple of comments about what he said. Now, he did make a good point. I know what you're saying. He said it was back. I find that very hard to believe. We know that when I was in the Detective Bureau, homicide investigation, or just a ordinary routine DOA, always took 6 to 8 weeks. I know for a fact that as of late, it's gone as long as 6 months now. There's backlogs, and they have very few people doing these type of examinations. But he makes a point that I think is very, very important. The police go to the location, they do a crime scene, they investigate, they do an investigation, and they look at the crime scene. Now the medical examiner shows up, also does a review of the body. Now an autopsy is conducted. Autopsy is very, very they really go into looking at the body. They look at the inside of the body. They try to find the cause of death. It's a very, very painstaking process that they go through. They examine head to toe every inch of that body. Now, when they don't find any obvious sign of a cause of death, that's when they lead it to toxicology. They leave it up to toxicology. So my money says that this is going to be found. The cause of death is going to be found in the toxicology. Now, we have the second part of it that they're talking about. This fifth person. Did this fifth person supply narcotics to these individuals? And perhaps Jordan was the one that was able to survive. He slept for a long period of time. Bill, you and I talked about fentanyl earlier before we went on the air, and the effects that it has. Perhaps there was just enough in that whatever he was that he ingested, if he ingested, we don't know that for a fact, but if he ingested something that the other three also ingested, perhaps there was just enough of this fentanyl that just knocked him out for that period of time, and by the grace of God, he's still alive. However, these other three, they go outside, perhaps fall unconscious, and they succumb to the elements. That's what seems most likely at this point. And look, I know the families are probably very, very stressed. They're upset. They're emotional. Perhaps they don't think that their loved ones, did any type of drugs. It could be a gummy. It could be so many things. With the way that narcotics, marijuana is legal today, and they're talking about legalizing other narcotics. That's the culture we live in today, unfortunately. So, somebody has something here. Come on, you have a few drinks and you try this. That may be exactly what happened here. So we don't know what the extent of their drug use was, but if there was any type of drug ingested, it's definitely going to show up in the toxicology.
Someone in the chat just said, because they were all found out in the backyard doesn't mean they died at the same time. No, it doesn't mean that. However, they all were sort of in the same area. They passed out. They obviously passed out in the yard. So time of death would be very difficult to ascertain because they froze to death. So one of the scientific ways to find time of death is temperature. You can't even rely on the body's temperature because they're an ice cube at that point. So the body temperature is going to be, below freezing because they're literally frozen solid. I know I've seen bodies that are frozen solid that were left out in the elements. And as we said earlier, and I know it's a little bit macabre and it's almost too hard to understand for someone that's never done this type of work. They have to wait days for the bodies to thaw out. They cannot do the autopsies until the bodies reach room temperature, and they obviously have to do an internal examination of the body. Let me play this. This is the attorney for Jordan Willis.
So if all of that is true, there is still a question. This has to be about drugs. Booze, drugs, whatever it is. Because if they're not shot and they're not stabbed and they're all dead, It just strains common sense to believe they could have wound up in this predicament if it wasn't done to them without drugs. It is the elephant in the room. What is the position of your client?
As I told you last night, Chris, I'm not in a position to comment on that at this time for a variety of reasons, not just on behalf of Jordan. And when and if the toxicology report comes out and when we get it, I'd certainly be happy to comment on it at that time. I'm not going to speculate about the activity and the behavior of other people who were not in the presence of my client at some point in time that evening or early morning hours.
And look, we both understand the dilemma. Okay, if the tox comes out and they had whatever it is in it that makes this a more understandable situation, he's now going to be chasing his responsibility as opposed to being in front of it and owning what happened that night. And one of those is a much more satisfying thing in terms of credibility. You're aware that that is the dilemma here.
That is probably the stupidest statement I've ever heard a TV news reporter make. And Chris Cuomo has a law degree. What is that all about? Oh, your client should confess so my audience will like it. You know, like, are you kidding me, dude? That's exactly the wrong. And he's got a law degree. Where did he get? He went to Fordham. What is unbelievable, Mike? Unbelievable.
You know, if the roles were reversed, Cuomo would be telling, you know, Mr. Willis, he'd be telling Mr. Willis, keep your mouth shut. We won't say anything until later. I mean, that's lawyering 101. Cuomo is just trying to goat him into saying something so there's some sort of clickbait. That's all that is.
Well, listen to what the attorney says. Listen to what the attorney says.
No, I don't see it that way. And, you know, he has an attorney and I'm representing his best interest. And he did nothing wrong. And that's what we're saying. That's what we're maintaining. And that's what we're going to say, no matter what comes back in that autopsy report.
Right. Well, something's going to come back. And I will give you a platform at that time and we'll discuss it because
you know, I just find it amusing. Like, yes, because I have a TV show, your client should confess so we could play it too. But, you know, this attorney, his name is John Paserno. He is he's doing what an attorney's supposed to do. And are there inconsistencies of what he has said? Yeah, they are, because he's being asked questions from every different angle. And does that make it appear that he's lying or his client's lying? Well, when did we ever hold lawyers to a standard of not lying? Mike?
Okay. Look,
I'm glad he threw that to Mike, the lawyer.
There's the old joke, you know, how do you know when a lawyer's lying? Because his lips are moving.
Lips are moving.
But he's hired to represent Mr. Willis's best interests. If I was that attorney, I'd be telling Mr. Willis not to say a word. Run everything by me. Cuomo is just trying to get some sort of, some sort of quip from the attorney or some statement that would be totally inadvisable. I'm with the attorney on this one. He's doing his job. He's doing his job, and there won't be anything mentioned until after the autopsy comes out, and he can consult with the police, and he can consult with the district attorney, and he can consult with his client. Yeah, no, that's just horrible advocacy by Cuomo, trying to get an attorney to say so, to actually violate the attorney's ethical duty to only do what's right for his client. Ridiculous.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of people in the chat are asking about, you know, first of all, the fifth guy who obviously the police know who the fifth guy is, and they're probably trying to use him as a witness. What happened? What did you see happen? What kind of drugs were they using? How much drinking was there? We don't know specifically. We know there's 3 people that are dead right now, right? Clayton McGeeney, Ricky Johnson, and David Harrington. Those 3 men are dead right now. We don't specifically know how. We know that from the autopsy, they had hypothermia. They froze to death. Someone in the chat said it was only 35 or 36. One of the days it went down to 17 degrees. So that's obviously below freezing.
The,
So
the night that it happened, the low temperature was 33. But you're right. I believe the next day, Billy, it went down and it was snow on the ground. So it was definitely an atmosphere that would preserve those bodies. And like you said, they had to be thawed out. So I don't think there's any question about that.
Kevmouth Mary F. Also, no one answered the door or phones. Yeah, we brought that up, right? He wouldn't come to the door. And apparently, when he finally did come to the door, and the police or someone made an issue of this, he went to the door with a wine glass in his hand. And I don't know if there was any liquid inside it or if what was inside it, but someone made an issue of that. And when asked, what would you do for the last 2 days, he apparently, and from his attorney, John Paserno, said he never left the house. So for 2 days, he stayed in the house. And apparently he works remotely. So he works out of his house. But this is the story they're going with. He never left the house. So we don't know specifically if that's true or not true. That's the story that his attorney, John Paserno, is telling us at this point. Now, obviously, the family has no knowledge at all of their loved ones doing drugs. Could this have been just a one-time recreational thing that they were drinking some beers and said, hey, try this, man. This will do this. Let me play a little bit. This is one of the family members.
How are you? How have these last almost 3 weeks been for you and your family?
They've been, there's no words to describe how they've been. Day by day, it's different. One day, you're crying and you're just barely getting by, and the next day you're pushing yourself to try to figure out what to do next. And that's hard because you don't know what to do next. I mean, this is something I don't think anybody would know how to proceed, and especially when we don't have any answers yet. You know, all we have is a bunch of people telling us, you know, what they think might have happened, but there's no answer. So we just sit and cry, or we try to get through. I don't know what to do. I'm lost, you know, basically.
Jennifer, we just heard from Jordan Willis's attorney there. Do you have a message for Jordan Willis tonight?
I do. I keep, you know, I just saw the lawyer say that he purchased those tickets so that they could go to a game. Well, you know, people do things with good intentions, but then something bad can happen that you didn't plan on. And obviously that's what's happened. Something came up that wasn't intended to happen. And with that, I want Jordan to come forward and say, you know, this wasn't meant to happen, but this is what happened. I did this, or I saw this. You know, just tell us. I know he's scared, but he was there. He participated in whatever happened that night. He had to know. And he's the only one left that knows what happened. And I think that's why he didn't answer the text messages that people sent him. And I think that's why he waited so long to let anybody know what happened with the men.
Well, and Jennifer, can I ask you about that? With the time we have left, and there are two quick things I wanted to ask you. So, you know, his lawyer said technically Jordan received the messages, but he did not see them. Are you crying foul on that? Do you not believe that?
I think it's false, just because I know I heard from several people that said they kept texting him. They went and knocked on the door. You know, they banged on the door. She had to break in, but somebody went earlier in the day. How could you keep missing texts and people knocking on your door
I can answer that
and
one.
not notice anything, not receive, any of that. I think he saw it and got scared and didn't know how to respond.
Jennifer, lastly, what do you think happened that night, and what do you make of the speculation surrounding drugs? Any thoughts about that?
I don't know what happened. I know none of these men are drug addicts. I know that. There's speculation that, they must have been doing this and that. And something may have happened that night. I don't know. I want people to know that this wasn't their life. And if something was provided that night, I know that none of them had the means to provide that. And that's part of the reason why I think there's a problem, is that all of them were taking care of their families and their bills and did not have money for that kind of thing.
Jennifer Marquez,
I mean, it's heartbreaking to see the family members so upset and wanting answers. But as we mentioned earlier on the show, the big answer will be when the toxicology report comes back, and that takes 6 to 8 weeks. As we said, the autopsies were delayed because of the state of the bodies were frozen. Now, we listened to Dr. Michael Bodden earlier on this show, and his hypothesis is, and he doesn't know because he doesn't have the toxicology report, his hypothesis is that all 4 of these men, the 3 that died, and of course Jordan Willis, they passed out from whatever drug they took in conjunction with drinking alcohol. Jordan Willis passed out in the house where there was heat. The other 3 men passed out and went unconscious outside. And according to Dr. Bodden, if the temperature was such that it was very cold or freezing, they would go into cardiac arrest. And you could die from cardiac arrest from that. Is that what happened? We don't know the toxicology, and we don't know the results of the autopsy yet. But it certainly seems that some type of drug was ingested that led to this. Phil.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, guys, put on the news. There's an epidemic in this country of fentanyl being mixed in with other narcotics. People are weekend warriors. They may use some narcotics, marijuana, cocaine, Xanax, different things of that nature, heroin. And I want to talk a little bit about that. If you take 1 grain of fentanyl, now fentanyl is an anesthetic. That means it's supposed to relieve you of pain and maybe knock you out. 1 grain of fentanyl will make you where you won't feel any pain. 2 grains will render you unconscious. 3 grains of fentanyl and you're dead. So again, these narcotics, if it is narcotics related, are not being done in a laboratory by chemists. These are, drug dealers. These are drug gangs. These are cartels that are importing these narcotics into the country, mixing it with other drugs. And a lot of times these deaths, when you have a person dying that took a Xanax and died, or snorted some cocaine or some heroin, they consider it a poisoning. It's an accidental overdose. You're not going to do it unless you're suicidal. You're not going to take something that you know is going to kill you. So we have an epidemic going on in this country. We don't know for sure what it was, but perhaps it was one of those situations, having a couple of cocktails. Hey, you know what? Maybe I have some cocaine. You want to try some? And I don't want to disparage these men. I don't know what their lives were like. They look like they were good individuals, good members of society. But, when you get involved in drinking and drugs, unfortunately in 2024, and all you got to do is put on the news, pick up a newspaper. There's an epidemic in this country with this stuff. Unless you're using something that comes from a pharmacy, you don't know how it was mixed. So it appears that that's the direction that this is going in at this time. And I guess we'll wait and see. Like Billy just said, toxicology is going to have the answers.
Donna Douglas from the chat, don't you think Jordan would tell the story if not guilty, or was he so under the influence he does not know
he
what
may
happened?
have told the story already. He may have told the
He told the story to the police, but
Yeah.
you know something, Donna? Once you have counsel, a counsel will advise you, an attorney will advise you to shut your mouth, because you can only hurt yourself through talking. You could say something inadvertently that gets you in trouble. So any attorney, Mike Geary is an attorney. Mike, what advice would you give to your client, Jordan Willis, if you were his attorney?
I'd tell him to shut up. That's as easy as pie. It's lawyering 101. But I will say, as strange as it is, when the police finally went to the house and they found the gentleman dead on the porch and the lady there, they finally got into the house. Willis opened up the door. He cooperated with them. They did a search of the house. They looked around. They saw what was there, what other substances were there. And he was actually cooperative. But like any other person, even if you're totally 100% innocent, I think you should consult an attorney before you go forward, because you don't know how an investigation is going to turn out. You have no idea. So you can cooperate with the police in the beginning, but once you get an attorney, you listen to that attorney's advice. And the attorney, if the police want to talk to Mr. Willis again, they have to do it with the attorney's express permission, with the attorney there. It doesn't mean that he will never talk to an attorney again, but he will keep his mouth shut until the attorney is with him.
Mike, couldn't there be
right.
culpability for criminal charges if perhaps Jordan Willis supplied a narcotic?
Sure.
I mean, they could. So
Yeah.
it would be in his
Severe.
best interest to zip it, to be quiet. I mean, I don't know if
That's right.
that's the case, but whatever the circumstances were that led up to these 3 deaths, you're making a great point, Mike. It says Kansas City Police Department released a statement that he was cooperative with the police department detectives when they were on the scene. So he cooperated in the beginning. But however, now he's, you know what, let me get an attorney. Let me speak to an attorney. Attorney tells him, zip it. You may have culpability for criminal charges going forward. And how about possibly a lawsuit? There could be a lawsuit lodged against him. So it's in his best interest at this point. And right away, people are saying on the internet, why hasn't he been named a person, a suspect or a person of interest? That's really just conjecture. That's really nonsense. He's cooperating at this point, and we don't even know there's an actual. It's not a homicide investigation at this point. It's an investigation of DOA. We don't even know if there's going to be criminal charges going forward.
Absolutely. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell, hit the like button, share us with your friends, your family. And if you want to contribute to us, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. And we also have a YouTube channel membership with, count them, 5 different levels. And you can contribute to the Police Off the Cuff podcast that is growing and growing. I wish a little faster, but we're still growing. So, one of the things that I keep trying to think about is that if one of these men that lost their lives here was a relative of mine, would I be taking a different perspective, a different point of view, a different view of this whole situation? Perhaps I would be. I think maybe we could, being professionals, former professionals with the police, we could look at this in a way that the police are investigating it. And right now, and it bothers a lot of people in the chat, I could see the police saying there's no foul play. How could there not be foul play when there's 3 guys laying dead in the yard? Well, we tried to explain that they were drinking and they probably took a drug, went out to the yard and passed out, and they froze to death. And that's what the initial autopsy is revealing. The toxicology is not back yet. However, that's what the initial. So is that foul play, or is that guys that took drugs, and did someone force them to take it? And as Mike said before, if someone supplied the drugs to them, they potentially could even, they used to say a sale took place with the mere offer of a narcotic that constituted a sale. That's what the law used to be in New York State. I don't know what it is in Kansas City, Missouri. Mike?
Yeah, Billy, it's the mere offer of narcotics. Even if there's no exchange of money, it could be between friends. It's not just like somebody's walking up to you and you're dealing in a hallway in the South Bronx. No, that's considered a sale. And if depending on how much of the narcotic, and what type of narcotic, that may be a felony sale. So yeah, Mr. Willis is possibly, if he's the one and that's in control of that environment, and if he does have that sort of substance, and if that's in the toxicology report to confirm that what might be in their system is what there's some residue or some extra left over in the house, he may be facing severe felony charges for felony sale of narcotics. And so nobody's thinking at this point he had intentionally given anybody anything if he gave them something. But even if without that intent to hurt somebody, the fact is it could be considered a sale. Yeah.
So that's why correctly he is taking the advice of his attorney, counsel, and keeping his mouth zipped and moving out of the house and basically going silent, because at this point, not only did he lose 3 very close friends, but many, many fingers are being pointed at him as if, and maybe, did he do anything wrong? I don't know the answer to that. Phil.
Well, listen, when you talk about sale, when we had narcotics units in the NYPD, if an undercover officer went over to a location and people are sitting on the stoop and they say, where can I get some cocaine? And the person answers them and says, you can go see that guy right over there, just because they happen to be hanging out and they know who the drug dealer is, that's steering. They could be charged with a crime of sale. So there's a lot of culpability that remains to be seen with regard to if this is a narcotics ingestion, overdose, death. Where the narcotics come from? Bill, you and I talked about it before we went on the air. Technology is going to come into this. Let's face it. They're going to go into the cell phones, look at the text messages that were exchanged. They'll look at computer searches to see if perhaps narcotics could be purchased on the internet through Snapchat, Instagram, all of these different avenues of social media. Is that going to be part of answering the questions that the family has? Now, the families, listen, the natural reaction is denial. I get it, believe me. And I sympathize with those families. I think almost everyone knows over the last 5-10 years, someone that has passed away, overdosed accidentally because of the fentanyl scourge that's going on in the country. So, technology is definitely going to be part of this investigation. Those cell phones are going to be key. What are messages going back and forth? And then we talked about, they're in the backyard. How did they get out there? Bill, you and I talked about it. When you ingest, if it is fentanyl, your breathing slows and slows. So now you can't breathe. And perhaps they went outside because they were having difficulty breathing. And that's how they wind up in the backyard. There's a lot of different scenarios that we'll be able to go through once we know what it is that was the cause of death with regard to the toxicology.
Absolutely. Schmitty, thank you for the $5 super sticker. I would move out like he did due to threats and such, but would a person move also per advice from an attorney? Do you think he was advised to move?
Yeah.
The attorney may have told him, get out of that house, because press is there every single day. Family members are coming by looking for answers. Make yourself scarce. I don't know if the attorney told him that. It's a possibility.
It could have been threats too, Billy. Let's face it. Friends are upset, and they think that he's got the answer to this horrible, horrible situation. And maybe somebody made some threats, and like you said, attorney or maybe family member says, you know what, maybe get out of there for a little while till they get the answers to this whole situation.
How did they die in plain sight, and why were those 3 Kansas City Chief fans left in the cold for so long? A mystery for nearly 3 weeks, and we still really don't have answers. It started as friends meeting up to watch a Kansas City game. A chaotic 2 days later, the men were found dead in a snowy backyard. So now the friend who hosted the party is lawyering up, and a girlfriend of one of the victims tells News Nation she thinks they were murdered. To keep it all straight for us, we have correspondent Alex Capriello live in Kansas City. Alex, what can you tell us?
Yeah, hey there, Elizabeth. This right here behind me is the home where those 3 men's bodies were found. But I actually want to direct your attention over here. You see that gate? That's what leads to the backyard. And that's where police actually made that shocking discovery. I say shocking because that's what people here in the neighborhood tell me. This is a low crime, very safe community. But the person who actually lives here, Jordan Willis, the center of so much speculation, was not well known among the people who walk these streets each and every day.
3 families remain distraught over the sudden and unexpected deaths of their loved ones. David Harrington, Clayton McGeeney, and Ricky Johnson, found dead in their friend's Kansas City backyard. The grandmother of David Harrington telling News Nation exclusively that the family hasn't heard much from police since their bodies were discovered nearly 3 weeks ago. I would like to know that someone is really working on this case, Grandma Marilyn Wingate said. I don't see how it could have been an accident. There are too many holes that are not filled in. Too many questions. On Monday, knocks at the door where the 3 men died went unanswered. Police say a friend, Jordan Willis, had been renting out the property. His attorney claims he fell asleep after saying goodbye to his friends and remained unaware their bodies were laying outside his home for 2 full days. Willis's lawyer says the young man is heartbroken over his friends' deaths. Investigators say they don't suspect murder, nor see any signs of foul play.
We have 3 guys. We have 6 children that don't have a dad. We have families. We have friends. And we're all hurting.
On Friday, in an exclusive interview with News Nation's Chris Cuomo, Lori Cruz, mother to David Harrington's kids, says she suspects there's more to this story than what police are letting on.
David was murdered. Whether it's a drug or it has to be for 3 men to be dead. It doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense to have 3 men dead, laying in the yard, and him asleep for 48 hours.
Yeah, and we reached out to the Kansas City Police Department. They're not really revealing much more than what they originally did about the cause of death. Remember, no foul play, no signs of murder. What we're really waiting on at this point is toxicology reports, and that could take several weeks. Speaking to the family of David Harrington, they say that's really the main piece that they want to see before speaking anymore.
Boy.
So, as we said, as the news is reporting, of course, the toxicology is the key to all of this. Cindy Goddard, thank you so much for the $3 super sticker. And while you're still today, thank you for the $5 super sticker. Very much appreciated. So, obviously, a family member is quite upset. She's referring to this case as a murder. And it's not a murder. Right now, it's a death investigation, which, if you ask the police, it would be called undetermined at this point. Undetermined cause. Mike.
Yeah, Billy, everybody wants to know the why. Whenever we talk about a case like the Koberger case or the Heuermann case, we always want to know why, because that gives a context to what happened. Right now, people don't understand the context that you could have 3, healthy guys, that some of the guys do construction and things like that. These are guys that are very strong, very healthy. They're in their mid to late 30s. They're, prime of life, and they're all dead and all together in a backyard dead. It's got to be murder when people see, because they can't figure out any other explanation. But you can't jump to murder, even though it's really crazy circumstances. You have to wait for the toxicology. You have to wait for the medical examiner. And once if they change the designation from a death investigation to a homicide investigation, now it looks like they're looking at some sort of murder investigation or some sort of other type of situation. But yeah, I feel bad for her, because I'd be the same way. Like, come on, has to be a murder. How could this happen? And so our hearts go out to them. But we know from our jobs in the past, this is how the system works. It's very slow. It's going to take a month and a half before we get this information from the ME's office and are able to move forward.
Mike, one of the things that I just want to explain to people in the chat is when the police do respond to a dead human body, there is a protocol, and there's also, besides the police and detectives responding, there's investigators from the medical examiner's office, and they're called medical legal investigators. Mm-hmm. And they do their entire protocol at the scene, which involves examining the body, taking the body's temperature, photographing the body, checking for wounds, checking the eyes to see if there's particular hemorrhaging, potential asphyxia, but specifically in these cases, searching for wounds, blunt trauma, gunshot wound, stab wound. I'm sure they did all of that, and they saw none of that. So on the scene, other than the fact that these bodies were frozen, there was no clear sense of how they died. So that's where, and we keep pointing towards toxicology, and people don't want to hear it, and they don't want to wait 6 to 8 weeks. But that's the only way you are going to find it out, is that you have to wait for the science to come back. Phil.
Yeah, Bill, I just want to comment on David Harrington's girlfriend there in the comment that she made. She's calling it a murder, but she also indicated, I'm kind of reading behind between the lines a little bit, maybe it's drugs. So I think what she was getting at is if someone gave them drugs that were laced with, let's say, fentanyl, that would be, in her mind, murder. That's what I think she was going with that. And Mike, I think you said it best. We got to sympathize with these people. They lost a loved one. I've had it in my own family where a loved one died of a fentanyl overdose. Unintentional, obviously. I don't think there's anybody, like I said, across the United States doesn't know someone. I know several people over the years that have died. And, that's the real victims. One, obviously, the victim is the person who died. But once they're gone, the remains is the family members, the loved ones that are going to have to deal with this. So, police do their investigation. They get interviews going. They examine the bodies. Bill just brought out about the medical legal investigators. They did their thing. Now the autopsy is conducted. They do an extensive examination of that body. Like I said earlier, they go through every piece of that body head to toe. They now have found no signs of anything that would cause this person's death. The cause of death has not been determined. It's undetermined. Therefore, they throw it to the toxicology lab and they hope for a cause of death from the toxicology lab, which I think is going to be the answer to this case. There's no winners here. Even though Jordan Willis survived, if he also ingested the drugs, he's got to live with this. This happened in his home. He's going to have people that are always going to point the finger at him. And these 3 young men that have families, they're gone. And now their families are left with this. So it's really tragic. It's a sad thing. Like we said in the onset of the show, this was a Sunday afternoon. Let's watch a football game and get together. And unfortunately, what we believe is it turned tragic due to a possible narcotic interaction.
Ben BOCCA, so drunk, passed out in the freezing cold.
Not
I
free.
don't think you could
Not
pass
free.
out being drunk and freeze to death unless you were drunk to the point of unconsciousness. Because when you're drunk on alcohol, you still feel that cold. And you would
try, free people, Billy. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And you would try to get the hell out of the cold. Whereas if you pass out from a drug overdose, and then according to Dr. Michael Baden, former New York City chief medical examiner, in an hour you can go into cardiac arrest. Is that what happened? We don't know yet because we have to wait for the toxicology. But Dr. Baden said at a certain temperature, exposed in the elements, you can go into cardiac arrest.
From 98 degrees, your normal body temperature, he stated that once it hits 80, you go into cardiac arrest. Now, there's other indicators here too, Billy. We have possible alcohol interaction. We have a possible drug interaction. Now, fentanyl, and I talked about this before we went on the air with you, Bill, it slows your breathing. It slows your breathing down considerably. That's how you eventually go unconscious. And then once your breathing stops, your heart eventually stops. So you have all of those components, plus you have the elements. You have the cold weather. So it's going to be not that difficult to see what was in their bodies, as we stated earlier, because of the fact that these bodies were kept in a cold environment for the couple of days that they were out there until they were found. And once the lab results come back, I think that's going to shed a lot of light on this case.
Donna Douglas from the chat, I think 3 people dying at the same time seems weird. The more we all discuss, the more I feel you guys are right. I just think that you're right. I mean, this is an anomaly. And again, according to Dr. Baden, he says people die in groups, usually from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Indoors.
Indoors, yeah. And outdoors, hypothermia, but which is extremely rare. It doesn't happen all the time. And why would someone die of hypothermia? Because something, either alcohol or drugs, didn't let them get the hell out of that cold. They passed out, and then they either went into cardiac arrest or they actually froze to death. Mike.
Yeah, Billy. We think we're looking at this. We're looking at 3 grown men all dying in someone's backyard, probably fairly in the same time frame, and how much of an anomaly it is. But there have been times maybe you've known, or you may have gone to a restaurant and had food poisoning because you ate something that wasn't good, and there may be times where people ingest something at a particular location, at a party, at a restaurant, at a particular time, and that there'll be several people who will have the same physiological reaction, vomiting and things like that. So taking that as an analogy, yeah, it is possible, and it's not totally unheard of for people to ingest something like this, and then perhaps some sort of narcotic unwittingly or unwittingly, and with alcohol, because they've been drinking alcohol for a while, and then that combination affects them all in a very similar magnitude, in a very similar timeline. And maybe they feel they need to get a breath of fresh air. They go outside and they pass out, and they don't have the ability to, wake up. It's not a gradual passing out. It's a very quick passing out. So it is an anomaly, but it is not totally unheard of. And it doesn't mean that somebody intentionally poisoned them, to try to injure them or hurt them or anything like that. But it is a very bizarre set of circumstances, but not unheard of.
100%. Yawn barf. It almost happened to me 45 years ago, and I only had too much to drink. A friend found me in time. Well, thank God,
Yes.
a friend found you, or you could have froze to death.
Billy, I had a DOA on Christmas Day, 1998. An 18-year-old had drank too much. He was inside, however, kept drinking straight vodka, threw up. His friends put him in bed face down. He choked on his own vomit and died. So is it possible from just alcohol? Yes, 100%. But in the situation that we're talking about, outside, 3 people together, seems very unlikely. And Mel Stiller in the chat says, "What? But why didn't they feel the extreme cold before dying?" That's a great question, and that leads us more in the direction of perhaps they were unconscious and weren't able to say, you know what, it's getting so cold, I got to get into warmth, based on an interaction with fentanyl, perhaps, or another narcotic. They go into a stupor, as Mike was just saying. It's not like it slowly happens over minutes. It happens within seconds. You fall unconscious once that gets into your bloodstream.
Sandy McMasters from the chat. Carmelita lawyer also said he showed them out the front door. Door was locked when fiance was trying to get in. So they came back in and went out to the back and died. Then Jordan locked the door. Sandy, I mean, that's a scenario you're creating. I don't think that's factual. Could it have happened?
Maybe,
sure.
maybe.
But we don't know that happened. Dee Dee's craft, she was drinking. I think she took something. That's what coroner said. You're talking about Dee Dee. I think you brought up your own daughter, and I'm sorry to hear that happened to you. But I didn't get the first part, so it's a little confusing to people hearing the second part of it. Unfortunately, I didn't read the whole thing. Yeah, so look. I know we're saying it ad nauseum that we have to wait for the toxicology, and that's true, because so many people want to look at this as a possible homicide, and right away the police are saying this is not a homicide investigation. This, yes, is a death investigation, but right now we're not seeing anything that leads us to believe that it's a murder investigation. Phil.
Yeah, you should question something like this. 3 people are dead, and they're middle-aged. They didn't die of any disease or anything like that. So, of course, it should be questioned. But now the job of explaining what we believe happened is on law enforcement, on the Kansas City Police Department. Now, their initial thing is they're telling us there doesn't appear to be foul play based on what the detective saw and interviewed, based on the medical examiner that responded to the location, and based on the autopsy at this point. So it's frustrating. I get it, believe me, but I think everyone has a right to question it. How does three middle-aged men, or whatever you want to call them, in the late 30s, how do they die? And they're found in the backyard of a house, frozen to death, basically, for 2 days. And the person whose house they were in, doesn't appear to remember or know, or slept for an extended period of time, like 22 hours. So it's very, very questionable, the whole thing. But I think that what we know, we're getting a lot of the answers. We're understanding a lot of what took place. And I am certain that the investigators that are on the case are going to be able to come to a conclusion and tell us what happened, almost even before they get to the toxicology, because of the statements that were made by Jordan. Perhaps he told them, we did take drug A, B, or C, or whatever it is. So I don't know if that's the case. And again, I don't want to disparage anyone, but you have to follow the facts. And that's what we do as law enforcement officers.
Roseanne from the chat, you don't feel cold if hypothermic. You simply get sleepy at some point and fall asleep forever. If drugs and alcohol involved, it is easily a possibility. Thank you, Roseanne, for very succinctly explaining that. Chantel Penton, the lawyer, said in an interview that Jordan walked his friends out the front door and went to sleep on the couch. But the lawyer has changed up a few times the story, so I don't know which one is in fact true. Which story? Because he said he slept and then he was on the couch. He walked them out the front door. He doesn't know where they went. Then the other witness, the fifth person, said they were all in the back room watching TV when he left. So it's,
yet to be determined, I would say, right, Bill?
Yes, I would think so. Teresa Wilson from the chat, was it a rumor the three men had been to other establishments and possibly homes? Prior to arriving at Jordan's home, the Chiefs game was over at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. I don't know. I don't have the chronology in front of me that I could tell you if that they had been ball hopping before this. Another thing that we didn't mention, what if they called up someone and had the drugs delivered to the house? If, in fact, this turns out to be drugs.
And it happens every day. It happens every day.
Yeah, people, it's like calling Amazon these days.
It is.
Bring me some of this, bring me some of that. And if that is unsolved crimes uncovered, I want to read what you said. Police off the cuff. Is it common for cops to say no foul play so the perps don't flee prior to cause of death determination? I don't think they would say that in this case. If there was something suspicious, I think they would say it,
They would be tight-lipped, perhaps. Good point that she's making. If there's some type of criminal culpability coming forward, they're looking to maybe arrest someone, they might be a little bit more tight-lipped, but they seem to come out right away and say, it appears there's no foul play. I don't think that that's going to be in this case, but that is a good point, though.
GC, survivor, also claims through his lawyer that he isn't aware how his friends died. If it was drugs, would he not know they took something? Why not share that with law enforcement? Well, because it could make him culpable and get arrested and charged with that. If he admitted to supplying it for them, they could arrest him for, as we previously discussed sale. So his attorney is telling him, do not admit anything, do not say anything, keep your mouth shut, get out of his house. Make yourself scarce.
Also, Billy, he may not, if he passed a joint around and there's fentanyl in it, he may not have known. So that may be the reason that he's taking that position. If there was drug interaction, I didn't know it was in there, so I don't know how they died. That could be the reason for him saying that too. So, but you're 100% right. His lawyer has to tell him at this point, keep your mouth shut. There could be culpability for criminal charges going forward. So the best thing for you to do is zip it. Joe Murray, attorney at law. Now, we're talking about something with lawyers, so we have Joe Murray on the screen. Now, Joe Murray is a terrific criminal defense attorney, but he's also a retired 15-year member of the NYPD, so he literally knows both sides of defense. If you want to contact Joe, You can get him on his website right up there on the screen, jmurray-law.com. That's jmurray-law.com. Or you can reach him on his telephone number, 646-838-1702. You can email Joe at jmurray-law.com. We believe that Joe Murray is a terrific criminal defense attorney, and he's also a big supporter of police off-the-cuff real crime stories.
And headlines. And one of these stories is a very confusing one, a one that has people questioning a lot of the details surrounding the investigation. And it has to do with the investigation and the death of 3 Chiefs fans who were found dead in their friend's backyard. For the very latest on this investigation, let's bring in Fox's CB Cotton, who joins us live right now. CB, thanks so much for being here. Walk us through what we know and what new details have now come to light.
Hi, Lexi. Well, calls, text, Facebook messages, they all went unanswered for 2 days, according to loved ones who say they tried to track down Ricky Johnson, David Harrington, and Clayton McGeaney. These 3 friends had all been hanging out with Jordan Willis at his home on the night of January 7th. Willis's attorney says his client saw his friends leave through the front door before going to bed. But get this, Lexi, for the next 2 days, Willis never noticed anything was wrong. I spoke with Willis's attorney, who says these were his buddies, some close friends, and he says that if Willis, his client, had saw them outside, he would have, of course, ran to help. However, this attorney tells me his client slept in most of the day on Monday and didn't leave the house on Tuesday either because he works from home. So the victim's loved ones and a 5th friend, though, a 5th friend who had been inside that home that night, they've all said Willis and his attorney keep changing their story about what actually happened, and they're hoping to find more answers soon with the autopsy and toxicology results, which are still pending. Now, get this, Lexi, Willis has since moved out of the home. Police have not made any arrest, and Kansas City police officers tell me they don't suspect foul play. This case is tragic, and it has a lot of people really scratching their heads right now.
Yeah, and hearing just those details there too, CB, it has me questioning a lot of the things with this, and I'm sure many viewers who are listening feel the same. So I want to ask you about that 5th friend that was there. Do we know anything more about that individual right now?
So our Kansas City affiliate has done some really great reporting on this story. They followed it very, very closely. The reporter there spoke with that 5th man over the phone, and they also spoke with that 5th man's attorney. He's now lawyered up, I should say. And the attorney also echoing similar sentiments from the loved ones of the victims, that the story being shared by Willis out in the public eye is not how he remembers it. This 5th friend said through his attorney that when he left the house that night, he recalled all 4 men, that would be Jordan Willis, Ricky Johnson, David Harrington, and Clayton McGeaney. This 5th friend says he recalls all 4 of them being awake, up, watching Jeopardy. So that's the latest detail or clue that we have learned from the attorney of this 5th man.
In the autopsy results, when do you think we can expect to get that back to them?
So Jordan Willis's attorney tells me he's been told about a 2-week time frame period. We have reached out to the company which provides autopsy results, conducts the autopsies for Kansas City Police Department, and we're still waiting to hear back. But what we've heard from Jordan Willis's attorney is that he's expecting to get those results in about 2 weeks. And he also says he thinks it's going to shed some light on what may have happened.
Sure. And one last question for you, CB. The friend whose house this all happened at, he is moving out or has moved out, as you said there. Do we know why? I mean, the circumstances surrounding this are already strange enough.
Absolutely, they are. So that friend is Jordan Willis, and his attorney told me yesterday in an interview that his client moved out because of all the scrutiny surrounding the circumstances. He says his client, he did nothing wrong that night. went on to say that these three men were some of his closest friends, and had he known they were in danger, he would have tried to help. But he said he's just been thrust into the public eye because of this case. It's been overwhelming, and so he decided to pack up and leave. And I think there's a lot more to watch with this story. It's, again, a lot of unanswered questions. People want to know more. And it's obviously very tragic for the loved ones involved. We did speak with the loved one of one of the victims, the father of Ricky Johnson, one of the victims. And the father tells me that his son leaves behind 3 children and they're just devastated. So this is really heartbreaking.
It is. It's heartbreaking all around. All right, CB, thanks so much for.
So, one of the things that we always try to, at this point in the show, remember the victims here: Clayton McGeaney, Ricky Johnson, and David Harrington. And we pray for them and their families. This is a hugely tragic situation, and we'll continue to follow this. And, we don't want to jump to conclusions. There's many people on here, on YouTube and whatever, even the news stations, they feed that conspiracy theory thing. We like to wait till the evidence is in and then make our conclusions based on experience and the evidence. But I think that we kept our heads on this, and we sort of did a good analysis of what we think happened with, a hypothesis, which is an educated guess, which we heard from Dr. Michael Baden. Professor Mike, your final thoughts.
Billy, my final thoughts are, as strange as the facts of this case are, I think there's a very simple answer to this, and we'll get that in a few weeks with the toxicology. But in the meantime, pray for the souls of them and their loved ones and their families, and let's not pass judgments on Willis until we get more from the toxicology and see what the police do at that point.
100% agree. Phil, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Condolences to these families of these young men that lost their lives. My opinion at this point is going to be it's going to be something that was accidental, unintentional. So heartbreak all around. Thoughts and prayers for those families. Maybe something good, a silver lining in the dark cloud comes out of this. That if you do indulge in narcotics, weekend warrior type stuff, just be real careful. I mean, don't do it is the only thing I could say. What's out there on the street, we have an epidemic in this country going on right now. My money's going towards that's what's going to be the outcome of this case. And you're going to watch a football game, have a couple of cocktails, be safe. That's all I can say. And again, thoughts and prayers for these families.
Absolutely. Folks, this Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great night, and God bless.
Stay safe, everyone.
Yeah.
One episode just ain't enough.